Good evening. 3 days from now, it's going to be a special day. Trais kan. Hae an. Aje will ye. Aje ni klini. Na hae an dole. 3 days from now, the sun will come up for fathers all across the United States and all across the Navajo Nation. Father's Day will yell. And I know many of you have already probably thought of how you're going to say thank you for all the good things that your father has been doing for you. Not just for you, but for the whole family, the home, and in many cases, maybe even for the extended family, as well as in leadership position, making sure everyone is safe, as well as having the livelihood from which they can provide for the family and the community. So, all of your fathers, 3 days from now, from me, my family, have a good Father's Day, a good, happy one. Nikitishnidolich, aje, aslinigi, trais kan, ade nachahai adolich. Ado tlashin hijen dahas kai. Eshin behani. You know, the language that we have as a Navajo is very, very powerful. Today, people talk about Navajo code talkers. How the Navajo language was used as a special code to defeat the enemy in the Pacific, help win the war, save thousands and thousands of lives in the Pacific. Well, if you go back to 1868, when only maybe 5 or 6 can speak the English language, all others at Fort Sumner, a military prison camp for the Navajo. Over 10,000 Navajos was driven out there. Well, they used their language. They used the songs and prayers that made up all these 4 sacred mountains. They brought them back. They were headed for east, not to come back. But because of their language, their songs and prayers, they came back. Did they come back with some money in their pocket? No. Zero. Some of them didn't even have shoes when they returned from Fort Sumner. Raggy clothes. When they came home, they were given a couple of sheep, a goat, and some ration. Told, you're free now, go back to where you came from. Well, they discovered that they were not going back to where they came from. They have a 3 million acre reservation. Sacred Mountains was far away from their 3 million acres. So they went back to Washington. However way they can make it there and talk to Congress president and say, hey, we came home after the treaty without clothes, no shoes, no money. And now we also lost a great deal of our land. We still use the sacred mountains. We go over there to pray, all four of them, two of them in the middle. We want to extend what you gave us from 3 million acres toward those four sacred mountains. Well, by 1930, they gained 6 times the size of the reservation of 1868. They expanded the reservation 18 million acres. Although they didn't get back to the four sacred mountains, but at least they have more room, so they created an economy on livestock, sheep, horses, cattle, goats, mules, land. They provided with their own hands irrigation ditches and farm, some of them 5 acres, some of them 20 acres. Kota are inna Betsilu yende Bezadigi ye Besotazinigi ye Beginigi ye Di abit ilyage do tselntas nilit ate lato shudayos. Oh, that's how they did it. So language is very, very important. And I want to commend Tuba City Boarding School to take a step further than just teaching language in classroom. They want to have others to talk to the young people, or in our case now, Sashin in the soul in the has twice son is shin that the soul lean a conde shido the nebazadi nedis lady shin sneta beshit yati that on the des dan no son shin so ade hada okis. Thank you. Welcome for tuning in. So that's the way it was. And when I was growing up, I could tell you quite a bit of coyote stories, and that's fine. My jol tloshiba hanegi, oh hayoy, hollo. And they come and you could tell one long story, or you could do it in pieces. My late trashojitene kehat in adi ilwotko. Trashojitene benahade let the gonde is clear. Oh, Kodoichi Honda, don't you know? Lebenak Egonepana Nahinte. They were playing game, taking their eyes out, throwing up, and they wait underneath it, and those eyeballs go right back into the socket. Of course, Coyote says, I want to play. No, Jansen, he always does. He's always insisting on doing something, even though people caution him. Even but he didn't care. He wants to try it. Well, he did. eventually he lost his balls. It didn't come back in his eye socket. So they had to sparrow people had to go around, restore his eyes using J. And J was some of that yellow stuff from J. You could see today into coyote's eyes. Those is just one little piece. We could tell that story, that's fine, because it's one way of keeping the language. But I like to tell you something that's for real. Ani adonidi ahot eat. Epenel ni dole sto. Nachalchendo yedal ni to yakodanzen dole. Things that I personally experienced growing up. First of all, I think I told you once before that growing up, we didn't have cell phone. We didn't even have a telephone that you crank and talk. We didn't have radio. We didn't have television. Nothing like that. No radio. Can't listen in. All we had was ourselves, our family, sheep, horses and cattle, goats, donkeys, mules, and the farm. But it was a good life. And everybody worked. There was no such a thing as time. We didn't have watches. We didn't know there was such a thing as a watch. We didn't know there was such a thing as 60 seconds or 60 minutes. We didn't know there was such a thing as minutes or hours. We didn't even have a calendar that tells us this is the month of May, this is the month of June. Nothing like that. We tell time by the stars, by the position of the sun, and by different events. We didn't have birthday parties because we didn't have a calendar and we didn't have a date that you were born. And I'm talking about 1930s, not too long ago. Well, whatever happened that I was going to tell you about is this. I'm sure history books will tell you Navajo experienced a serious livestock reduction that nearly wiped out the entire Navajo economy. And that didn't happen a long time ago. This happened, the first livestock reduction actually started 1934. When Commissioner named John Collier was the Commissioner of Indian Affairs in D.C. They were saying Navajos have too many horses, too many cattle, too many sheep, too many goats, destroying the soil. So they tried to get the Navajos to reduce it. A little incentive, 5 cents for getting rid of one sheep, 5 cents. Goat, a little bit higher. Horse, same way, 5 cents. cattle 5 cents. So if you get rid of 5 sheep, they'll give you 25 cents for 5 sheep to reduce our livestock. Well, that didn't work. Ado Yego the Nepali Nikutadi Lada. As a matter of fact, the only ones that were doing that were the ones that have small flock of sheep. It's easy to deal with. But the ones that had 1,000 head of sheep, they could get rid of 5 sheep, doesn't make that much difference to them. But if you only have 30 sheep, 5 is a lot of sheep to get rid of. Well, that went on 1934. And it didn't work very well. So 2 years later, 1936, they got a little more vigorous. They actually had some more BIA range riders, employees on horseback to come out on the reservation, make sure that everybody reduced their sheep, cattle, and horses. That didn't work very well either. So in 1940, the third time, livestock reduction came. 1940, I was 12 years old. So I remember quite a bit what was going on. They got serious. No longer going to pay you so much money. You got to reduce it. So they brought some military type people with guns on horseback, and they had mules with packs so they can go out on a reservation, spend the night out there, look at your sheep, horses, and cattle. And they built these sheep dipping vets, over 100 of them across the reservation. They asked everybody to bring their livestock there to be dipped and counted. If you don't do it, you go to jail. Well, I live in Teecnospos. Teecnospos is Shagan. I watch all of this going on. If you don't do it yourself, these BIA range riders with guns, they just go right in the middle of your sheepfold, take a whole herd of them, take it away from you any way they can. Clean up Bekashi, all those horses and cattle. Very bad time. People crying. I had a little donkey, I call him Sugar. He's mine. They took it away from me. I cried. It didn't work. So, one day, at Teecnospos, there's a gentleman. I'm not going to call his name. He got very angry, went to different families and said, look, how long we can just sit here and have the government take our livelihood away from us and put us in jail if we don't. Let's do something. Let's fight back. And this one person had pretty good size cattle and horses. And he had a pickup truck. I guess around Teecnospos area, there were only about 3 or 4 people that had automobile, like pickup trucks. So he had 5 or 6 family volunteered to help fight back. Enough is enough. So they went to a BIA range rider's home. He was Belakana, he and his wife lived there. And he had all these range riders working for him. They went to his home late at night. About 2, 3 or 4 in the morning, they bust open his door, grabbed him and his wife. They tied him up, threw him in the back of the pickup truck, destroyed all the furniture we had in there, and they drove off. And they put him in a dugout storage shed. They threw him in there, locked the door, both tied. Then they left. Well, it just so happened, this happened on the day that the trader had a lunch meeting with the range rider and his wife. They waited, nobody shows up. So the trader drove out to where the range rider was living. They saw the door bust open, furniture turned over, and they were gone. So the trader drove real fast back to the trading post. They had his telephone where you crank it and it rings someplace else. So he made a telephone call to Shiprock, BIA office, told them that something happened to the range rider and his wife. They're not there. Shiprock BIA called Albuquerque Bureau of Indian Affairs regional office and told the story about the trader and his wife, not the trader, but the range rider supervisor and his wife. Something happened to them. So immediately, BIA organized part of the cavalry army, bust them down, and their horses and cattle trucks down to Teecnospos. And they all saddle up, put their guns on their horses, ammunition, bedroll in the back of their saddle, maybe 20 or 30 of them start looking for these two, Pelacana. Well, within a day and a half, they discovered where they were. They opened the dugout, and there they were, about half dead. Took them out, brought one of those small airplanes, took him to Albuquerque to put him back to life. In the meantime, they start looking for who did it. 5 or 6 days tracking, interviewing people in the community. These 5 guys on horseback now, no more pickup. They crossed the river, San Juan River, into Colorado. And there on the other side of the river was another family, Navajo family. They had a lot of sheep too. And they told them that we are being hunted by the United States government on horseback. They're tracking us. So they let them stay there. They hobbled their horses, took their saddles right there, right outside. The next morning, this family also had a pickup truck. And they asked if he could take them to Cortez, Colorado, to look for a lawyer, because they know they're looking for them and they need a lawyer. So they took off after morning breakfast near Aneth, Utah, trading post. It's a long drive from where they were to Aneth trading post, then all the way out to Cortez. Well, not too long, Army on horseback traced them to that hogan. And of course the lady and his kids were there. She tried to pretend she didn't know, but the saddle is out there. The horses are hobbling out there. So she admitted that they went to Cortez. So they went to Cortez. They rode on their horse to Aneth trading post, make a phone call. These soldiers make phone call to Shiprock, New Mexico, asking for help to look for this yellow pickup truck. The dirt road and a better road that went from Shiprock to Cortez. They intercept. They told them to wait over there for this yellow truck. So all Cortez police, BIA police, they're all gathered there at the junction out of Belazon. The yellow truck came up, they stop it. They look in the bag, and there were these 5 guys. They handcuffed them, took them back to Shiprock. They were charged with federal crime, kidnapping, all kinds of charges. They end up in federal prison in Prescott, Arizona. Walia. Eventually had a trial. All 5 of them convicted, put in jail. In the meantime, this leader who had a pickup and organized this, he had some kids there. 2 young boys. Both of them joined the United States Marines. And became Navajo code talkers. While his dad and others were in jail in Prescott because they were defending what they believed was rightfully theirs. They're now in prison. Serious charge, kidnapping, things like that. In the meantime, the two sons in Pacific, saving lives, help win the war to protect the freedom and liberty that we all have. What now? Well, after the war, 1946, we all got discharged. One of those brothers was close to my age. I was very young, but he was about 2 years older than I am. He and I came back to Shiprock after discharge. And there, his father met us in his pickup. And he said, I could take you back to Teecnospos now, but I need to go to Window Rock. So he took us to Window Rock. He said, I check in every month in Window Rock because I am on probation. All of us are on probation, got out after the war. And I guess the federal government realized they made a mistake doing what they were doing to the Navajo Nation. Da isigi eshi ya kotanizyon the ne yahades nelen ade chehes, but they were on probation. Diyen hitkal now telling us what they did, how they did it, and how they rode around and avoid all these federal marshals and army guys, cavalry guys, avoiding them, crossed the river, and they got caught. So, we got back to Teecnospos eventually. That's a real story, something that really happened. We need to remember that because it might happen again. We're still under the federal government. They already took a lot of things that used to be ours. Ashinella behini naned at nihiyahilla nihito an hinan sinit al chudainal ino da Atlanta no digin nakhayilla toba kai toba are dan lo visit da hollo alya Edat ebelakana ayayot with the help of Washington. Akati shindi chopagot kodosa that they need tolashanan katati no. Ado and detta. Legenda etokon nitlakon. Let's so that Eshinat Yenda Steen. Yedat Indasli Nihedo again the shotnish and dasnish nihit no. To get done bigger. To get chedo holon bigger. Nich in the halio. Didigi. Benel ni hoyate amado je ni kliniki inde da ache anal amasan tano kliniki bedal nihigi nakhalchen bebel ta holne Yate, bin between husband. What rightly belongs to us, we must keep. And what rightly that has been taken, that was ours and have been taken away from us, we must go and claim it. And what we don't have, and somebody else is doing it for us, let's bring it on with our own mind, with our own hands, with our own language. And hizadigipe, aye, ade, at ishi, la nani tsenigi, ben shudil te, an he, adoch, kaishi paini klehem. We need to do it ourselves, with our own mind, with our own hands, with our own language, and with our own people, our children, our grandchildren. Et at e nanigi pizzilo pensizzo andit il niligi tipe danitino. Benache yenal neto le nache yohidol atliki jo ek akon nahaat school is open. There's a lot of communication mechanism out there we can use to teach our children. Thank you.